That was, of course, President late today, the president, moments after the bombshell opinion piece dropped in the New York Times, which will run tomorrow. Joining me right now with the very latest, that is NBC News Chief White House correspondent Hallie Jackson. I've been waiting to hear what you know, because you know everything that's happening right now. I mean that, right now. You're the king of that.
Latest.
Is the White House going to have an internal investigation? They must be wondering, using the vocabulary notes.
Yes.
You can figure out who writes something. If you go through a study of the vocabulary, you can figure it out. Go ahead, your thoughts.
Okay, so a couple things here, Chris. Let me tell you first, your first question. What do we know right now? I will tell you this. There are people close to the president and the White House telling myself, my colleagues Kristen Welker, Peter Alexander, the president's mood is volcanic, to use their description of the words. He is exploding at this, furious, not just about the op-ed itself, the contents of it, but that it would be published in the New York Times, a paper he both despises and yet at times yearns to be in when he calls reporters in to be able to talk to them, that it was published anonymously in the Times. Now, let's be clear. Anonymous to us, but not to the heads of the op-ed pages in the Times. They know who this person is. They're just not telling everybody else because they say the senior administration official would then jeopardize this person's job if they were, in fact, to be revealed publicly. As for this, so that's what we know is going on. We know that the president is bothered by this because he called this gutless. He said it himself publicly inside the East Room just after this news broke. As to the second part of your question, the idea of the speculation, boy, that is the game of the moment here, Chris. I was walking up the driveway to come on the air to talk with you, and somebody shouted, "Hallie, who do you think it is?" That is the question of the moment. And again, there is a lot of okay, linking this word to this person, and can we do this? Keep in mind, this is an administration where officials inside this West Wing and in the administration have routinely tried to throw people off the scent, right, to cover their tracks by planting different words or phrases or ideas in order to misdirect, essentially. So it is full of intrigue.
Okay, Hallie, you know the trade craft of your business as well as anybody around. The term senior administration official is not a BS term. It's not somebody. It's not one of the guards at the gate. It's not somebody who reports to. It's probably somebody who reports to a cabinet official or to the president, pretty high up. That's senior official.
That's a key word you just said, though, probably, Chris. And here's the thing. Every news organization, just to pull back the curtain, defines senior administration official a little bit differently. We have asked the New York Times, how do they define senior administration official? Senior, what does that mean? Is it somebody who, as at some organizations, does senior mean somebody who talks directly to the president? Does senior refer to a title in a certain area? The New York Times is not responding to that question from us, but they are describing this person as somebody who is, in their words, senior, Chris.
But if it comes out that it's not a senior official, and it will come out at some point, that it's not, they'll look stupid. So I don't think the Times, which has a lot riding on this, would call somebody a senior administration official if they didn't mean it. Because we all know what that means. It's somebody important. Somebody we may not know their name, but we damn well know what their job is, like speechwriter for the vice president, for example. Somebody knows how to write an op-ed piece. Somebody knows how to file with James Bennett in the op-ed page of the New York Times, knows how to do it without the help of a secretary or a staffer or any kind of help. It's somebody who can do it by themselves, because who would risk bringing in a posse to do something like this? That's my thinking. Yours?
Can I go back to something that I was saying earlier that relates to the point that you're just making, Chris, which is, while there is a lot of intrigue about who did this, how did this come out, there is also a lot of concern about the actual content of this reporting, Chris, that backs up in many ways Bob Woodward's reporting in that book that has now been released that talks about officials in this administration steering this president away from some of his worst impulses, as it's been described. It is a direct link.
We have connected it in history to George Kennan's telegram, which was about containment. But in this case, it's not the containment of a foreign power like the Soviet Union or the communist threat internationally. It's about the threat of the chief executive of this country. Thank you, Hallie Jackson.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.